Hi, Esties. We're back with another episode of Esthetician Edit, and today we have Ashlyn Freitas. And today we're going to be talking about how to make your business scalable and sustainable. She's done a really good job at making her business scalable and sustainable. So I guess we can start off with like, if you don't mind, just introducing yourself and your background and kind of telling us how you got to where you are now with your med spa.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say I was born and raised in this space. I fell into the business of aesthetics, is kind of what I like to say. So I've always been fascinated into health, into skin. And after I had gotten my aesthetics license, I became really curious about how to make my business work because they didn't teach you that in school. It was just like, oh, if you've got magic hands, clients are going to fall on your lap. And I think
Mhm.
everybody here can agree that that's not how clients come to you. And so I started off at a kind of single location spa, eventually worked into becoming a kind of like a trainer and director for a larger spa chain and oversaw everything from the West Coast up to the Canadian markets, which eventually led me to become an executive and then which eventually led me to kind of open up my own space as well. So I realized that during that time that though being a solo esthetician was great and I loved the consumer and the client facing, I became really obsessive about how do I make this efficient? How do I make this profitable? And how do I make this scalable? Because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, the last thing that you want to do is work an 80 to 100-hour work week with no breaks and unable to make this really a career for the long term. And so I've had people of 100 underneath me in teams that I've led. And so eventually I kind of just said, went through private equity for some spas and said, why can't I do this for myself and kind of, you know, create my own brand. And so that's kind of what I did.
Mhm. That's very interesting because I find that like there's estheticians that go solo, but then they don't have your background. But then also people with your background sometimes have the fear of taking that risk and doing it for themselves. Like they
Mhm.
almost like are they kill it for other people and other businesses. And then when it comes to doing it for themselves, they're scared. So I just want to say kudos to you for like taking that leap and doing it for yourself.
Oh, it's the scariest thing ever doing it on your own, especially when it's on your own dime and your own capital, right?
Mhm.
There's a different level of fear associated to it versus when you're doing it on someone else's dollar and mistakes are on someone else's dollar, right?
That's
So
true.
it totally is. And kudos to anybody that's opened up their own space. It takes a lot of grit, but you can do it as long as you have the right kind of processes and kind of mentality in place.
Mhm. Which we're definitely going to get into today. But if you don't mind just kind of starting off with like what do you believe are truly the keys to creating a sustainable, scalable business?
Honestly, you need to have actionability, you need to have automations, and you need to have a deep fundamental purpose.
Hmm.
And what does that look like? Let's talk about purpose. When I say fundamental purpose, the amount of times that I see so many business owners who try to be a cheesecake factory menu of services and the kind of like the jack of all trades, it can oftentimes shoot you in the foot because your consumer and your client have no idea who you are and kind of what you stand for.
Hmm.
And what are you an expert of, right? You have to be an expert in something. You can't be an expert in everything. So what is your niche and kind of like how do you kind of hone that in? And then to back that up, you need to have a fundamental purpose as to what your brand stands for. The amount of times that I say no over yes is a lot, right? And I say no to brand partnerships, to networking opportunities, to applicants, to vendors. I mean, the amount of times that I get vendors coming through my door, like begging me to buy a device or begging me to buy a product, and it just doesn't align with our brand values. So,
Hmm.
I think you have to have like a really deep sense of fundamental purpose. The second is actionability. You will get decision fatigue as a business owner. I mean, I know, like I see you smiling because it's a thing.
Yeah.
You make a lot of micro and macro decisions, and so you have to look at what's in front of you and go, how do I make the best decision with the information and resources that I currently have? and allow that to be evolving. The decisions I made a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, are not the same decisions I'm making today. And those decisions are going to get more finite as we progress through the business and as we scale.
Mm-hmm.
So give yourself decision fatigue, make a decision and make a decision fast. Do not get analysis paralysis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then third is automations. I see so many people that are they're employees of their own business, and they work 100-hour work weeks. They have no breaks. They have no balance whatsoever because there's a sense of control because you want this to succeed. You have a lot riding on this, especially if you've got a hefty payroll. I mean, I felt that especially in the beginning
Mm-hmm.
where, you're just trying to make payroll and you're trying to, go into the green and make sure that you're not going into the red. And so, but the way that you get there is through automations, whether that's systems, processes, talent acquisition, training opportunities, inventory management. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to get there, but if you have a deep sense of purpose, say no more than you say yes.
Mm-hmm.
You can make fast and quick and finite decisions, and you can automate the hell out of it. You will scale.
Yeah. I always tell people, like, I think that, like, part of kind of creating your own, I guess, brand identity and your purpose is identifying your values, like, as a business owner and always kind of asking, does this business opportunity align with my values? Because it's true what you say. I think a lot of business owners will start out with like a purpose and then it'll get diluted because then they
Mhm.
just they kind of end up doing what they think is popular or they start to compare themselves to other businesses and stuff rather than just staying focused on their own purpose. What would you say is like your I have another question also. I want to like keep it in the back of my brain as far as
Yeah.
automations, but like how did you identify your purpose?
I love that. I also want to ping off something that you said is that people are constantly going on trends and what's new. And you as a business owner have to really identify what's a trend and a fad and what's here to stay. And that's
Mhm.
part of like the power of no, right? Is, making sure that you're not just doing the latest TikTok trend or clickbait or whatever the case that might be, and really understanding your consumer and who you are and kind of what you stand for. And then I'm sorry, can you repeat your question one more time just because I had to say that?
Oh, so like how did you create your own purpose? Just so we can kind of get a little bit deeper as to the process of creating your own purpose. And I kind of did want to go a little bit deeper then afterwards into automations.
Yeah.
Because when you started talking about automations, my brain was like, wait, what is all of this stuff you're talking about? Because I'm so new as a solo esthetician. I don't know if I told you this, but I actually opened my suite like 3 months ago. So everything
Congratulations.
yeah,
That's
thank
huge.
you. So everything you're saying, my brain is a little bit like, whoa, 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 that seems like very far ahead for me. So I'm gonna kind of be like like the dummies 101. Like I'm gonna just ask like the stupid questions.
There's no
And
stupid questions. It's just
yeah.
information. It's just skill sets to learn.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, to answer your questions about kind of TIEV's purpose, so TIEV actually, we trademarked it. And when we were thinking about our name, we really wanted to capture the essence of really who we are and what we wanted to stand for. We took the first two letters of timeless and the first two letters of everlasting, and we created TIEV. And what does that mean, right? So we wanted a timeless approach to aesthetics. We don't want you to not look like yourself.
Hmm.
Especially in this digital era where everything is filtered and we're told you need to have the most like perfect jawline and the perfect cheekbones and the perfect this. We really wanted to create a timeless approach to aesthetics that was skin health focused and really ensuring that you look like you but better. That's actually our tagline is you but better. And we really wanted to create an everlasting experience, especially in the medical aesthetics world. It can feel very churn and burn, right? It's just like, how
Hmm.
quickly can I get you in and out of my chair? And we didn't want that for our consumer. We didn't want that for our patient. I sure as hell don't want that for myself, right?
Hmm.
So we really wanted an experience that stood beyond the treatment room, that really stays with you. And as my business partner, Dr. Goodman, and I were kind of creating this brand, we really sat down and said, what do we want the experience to feel like? Right? That sounds kind of intangible, but you really have to sit and think, What do I want this to feel like for the consumer? And how do I break that down? And then you kind of build your core values, your mission, your vision around that. And so for us, we wanted the patient to be in the driver's seat of their aesthetic plan. It's
Hmm.
not our version of beauty, it's your version of beauty because that looks very different for different genders, different people, different ethnicities, different cultures. As long as it's safe and and there's education to support and back it up, we're here to do that. And we're really here to get to know you. We want to get to know you as a patient. We want to get to know you as a person because we're interested in a long-term relationship, not a one-off transaction.
Hmm.
And so, as we were having these conversations, we built our core values and our mission and our vision really around that and creating sustainability practices operationally and automations and talent acquisition in order to support that narrative. And so, everything at TIEV now has literally, whether that's an SOP, a training guide, in order to really support those processes. And our meetings are literally fundamentally built around that.
Hmm. Would you say that that's like the first step is that brand purpose? And then what would you say is the second after that? I know you mentioned actionability and what was the third one or the other one?
Automations.
Automation. So then what's like the next most important after that?
Yeah, I think your first is you really got to get serious about who you are, what you stand for, right? So the
Mhm.
fundamental purposes. I would say second is building out your systems and your space to support that. So, I mean, we can get as nitty-gritty as you'd like, right? But even down to the way that our space looked, right? How it felt when you walked through the doors. Every single piece, every bit of lime wash paint and jade stone and European cabinetry that we have throughout the space. We wanted it to
Mhm.
support that feeling and that essence of that first impression of when the consumer came in, down to the digital experience. So one of my first hires was actually a creative director. She oversees my
Okay.
entire brand, my socials. I'm very operationally strong. I have a lot of ideas in my head, executing it and understanding where my deficits are when it comes to brand and creativity is not so there. The ideas are in my head,
Mhm.
but actually executing it and understanding how to do that is not where I succeed. And so my creative director is absolutely fabulous. And I try, it's to the point where like she just runs that whole side of it for me. And I don't even have to think about it, which is great being this far into the business. But is having someone that can really create that digital experience online. And then internally, we have the processes in place to make sure that that lives in person. So,
Mhm.
I mean, my team literally gets trained on experience of like they know what eye contact is supposed to look like, how to greet somebody when they come through the door. We have our TIEV approved words and our not TIEV approved words, down to how we offer a water, down to how our body language and how we greet the patient back. I mean, truly, like every detail is thought of.
Mhm.
And even down to the actual treatment room experience. We always say that from provider to provider, you're always going to get you're going to get the same result, same safety, same product, same everything. The experience is going to be the same no matter who you go to. At that point, you're just picking out a personality that you really like and then somebody that you really connect with.
Yeah.
And I love that our consumer always says that the digital experience is the same that lives in person. Because I don't know about you, but
Mhm.
if you've seen something online, you're like, I guess you could try that out. That sounds so amazing. And then you go and you're like, this is not what I thought this was
Yeah,
going to be.
I always say that actually to my boyfriend and to other people. I'm like, the people that are the most popular online, like the most influential spas that I see that I've gone to, because I've gone to a lot of spas, are usually not the best. It's actually the ones that have been doing it for years. They are like doing it from their house, like that. They usually have like the best skills, but they're
Yeah.
just lacking in what you're saying. And I think that it's so cool that you recognize from the very beginning, okay, this is the area where I lack in, where I'm not like, it's not my strong suit.
Mhm.
And that's what you invested in. Because I think sometimes people invest in the wrong things rather than, okay, saying, okay, this is where I struggle and this is what I'm going to invest in. So I love that.
Absolutely. And well, and when you think about it, right, we're told online, you invest into ads, invest into all of these things.
Hmm.
That's great, 100%, and I agree to a certain extent. But you have to look at yourself as an owner and go, what am I good at? If you are really great in the treatment room and technicality and didactic is like really where you thrive, maybe
Hmm.
you're the person to build out the education and the treatment protocols and all of that. And maybe you need a strong spa manager to run your kind of day to day and your inventory management and all of those other things.
Hmm.
Or, someone like myself who's creatively stunted, right? I know that about myself. And so I hire out for that. We've got a whole finance team and CPAs and accountants that are amazing because I could do it, but that's kind of a scary realm for me. And so being able to outsource that and they run everything for us is really powerful for me. So I can focus on the things that I'm good at, which is scaling the business and automating the processes and talent acquisition and
Hmm.
networking and all of those other things. So I think you just have to get really honest about like what do I enjoy? Because at
Hmm.
the end of the day, when you open a business, like you can't just like put your 2 week notice in and take off. We're going into serious debt for devices and equipment and lease spaces or uniforms or whatever the heck it might be.
Hmm.
You got to make it work. And so you have to ask yourself, what do I enjoy? What is my purpose? What do I see myself doing every day? And what do I not enjoy doing and what am I not good at? And let me see if I could outsource that. Whether that's a 1099 or hiring your first W-2, it's so, 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 so beneficial. And the second you can, you absolutely should. And to be honest, like I hired people before I was ready financially. I
Hmm.
and it was the best decision that we did for TIEV because it allowed us a good what we call ROI, right?
Hmm.
So a return on investment. So the way that you look at ads or the way that you look at any sort of, device that you're trying to make money from, you should look at your talent acquisition as such as well. Like, how is this person going to change my business for the better and give me more time and more financial freedom to some capacity?
Hmm. Would you say like this is kind of the mindset that an esthetician, even if they're, let's say like someone like me who's just started off solo, but long term, I see like the vision for myself that you have for yourself. Is this something that I should be doing like kind of right now? Because as you're
Absolutely.
speaking, I'm like, wow, in my mind, I'm like, but I don't have the means yet, but
Mhm.
I can probably invest in the right thing. I'm just not doing that. Like I'm investing in so many different things.
Mhm.
But what would you say to like, I guess like a solo esthetician that is kind of like me? Like where should she start?
That's a great question. I mean, I think the first thing is you got to figure out where your client's coming from because if, you don't know where that's coming from and, how are you expected to scale, right? So I think you have to have some sort of a semi clientele in order to do that. And if you're someone that doesn't, you're like, I don't even know how to market myself,
Hmm.
I would look into an ads person or I would look into maybe like a salesperson that can literally like go to markets and different like whether it's like farmers markets or other like-minded brands and like you're doing pop-ups there. I will also say don't be afraid to get gritty. I mean literally to this day I'm 9 months pregnant. I'm literally due in 2.5 weeks.
Oh my
Just
goodness.
like a week ago I was at a business and like we have a partnership with a local business and we did a pop-up there and we got a ton of leads from it and it was like really exciting and people came and they booked and it was fantastic. So I just think that don't be afraid to get really gritty and figure out like you have to be willing to put yourself out there like as estheticians and as providers like we cannot be locked in our room and expect clients to hit us in the face. Like you have to go get those clients, whether it's from a digital perspective or like a B2B or like a business to business or partnership,
Mhm.
things like that. But then secondary to that is like absolutely like if maybe ads isn't your forte or social media is not your forte, hire a 1099 social media coordinator that can come in and film you once a week or once a month, get a ton of content and just post it all on your socials for you.
Mhm.
or an ads person, or maybe like CPA and accounting is not your thing, right? You
Hmm.
could either do something like QuickBooks, and that kind of does it for the most part for you, or get a CPA.
Hmm.
Right. I think, things like that doesn't necessarily have to be like right away, like within your first few months of business, but definitely something more on the horizon. But I think anybody that's going to help you scale is going to be a
Hmm.
good investment. So social media, ads, a salesperson, and things like that.
Are there any other automations? Like, so are these considered automations? So the social media, what are automations?
Yeah. So I would say automations of systems or
Mhm.
processes. Okay.
Okay.
So when you look at things like systems, so like a CRM, like a client relations management tool, something that you can hold patient information down to like, what was spoken about in their consult. Hopefully your CRM can do email and SMS management so you can automate when people have birthdays, like you do a birthday promo. If a patient hasn't come back to see you in within a certain time frame, like the system will automatically ping them for you.
Mhm.
Or maybe patients who have outstanding vouchers, maybe they bought a package with you or a promotion and they haven't come in to use it, or a membership. Like these
Mhm.
are all, or people who haven't purchased retail in a certain amount of time. A CRM system is something that really should be more than just a booking capability. It should really be where you're able to run financial reports, and you're able to automate things as much as possible from like an SMS email perspective and client engagement.
Mhm.
And then when I talk about automating processes, like personally for us, I don't want to do laundry. I really don't.
Mhm.
So one of the first things that I did was I hired a laundry service. They come a couple times a week, they pick it up, they drop it off, and it's great. Down to like my entire ads team, they run my ads from start to finish. I have a meeting once a month. They let me know what creatives are being put out. They let me know what's happening. I look at it from a KPI perspective and it runs for me. So that process is done through talent acquisition. I hired
Okay.
certain talent to be able to do it. I set the expectation of what kind of ROI, return on
Mhm.
investment, and what type of expectations I wanted to come from ads. So that was, new client acquisition and what type of ROI I wanted on that. And then they kind of ran with it and we were able to kind of fine tune it down
Mhm.
to inventory management. So my internal team, if your inventory is not spot on, like you need to know what your COGS are, which is your cost of goods and services. You need to know exactly how much that's costing you per treatment. If somebody does an add-on, if a treatment chair time down to the gauze, the distilled water, like you need to know exactly how much that treatment costs you and what that chair time looks like
Mhm.
that you can appropriately price point, but then also too, if you have somebody that's an overusage of product, like a provider, I've very much had trainings on product usage. Like you're
Mhm.
overusing and that's eating my bottom line, right? And how do we make sure that we protect the patient experience and making sure that obviously we want this is what's allocated for it, and if anything is going over, I want to know why, what happened. And so like that is an automated process is what I would say. So automatic systems or automatic processes, and there's a
Mhm.
thousand ways that you can do that, from laundry service to COGS to inventory management to your front desk, right? Like, are there things that are not being efficiently ran at your front desk, or the
Mhm.
checkout process that's costing you time and money because mistakes are being made and we're having to discount or give free services, down to systems like a CRM or things like OmniSend, which is like a marketing tool, or Flowdesk or Canva or whatever the case might be.
Wow, you gave like really good actionable steps. Like I feel like if I'm probably gonna go back and listen to this podcast and write notes. Like you said something and I literally was like, I need my notebook, but I don't see my pen around here. So thank you for that.
Oh my
Um,
God,
yeah,
absolutely.
because when you,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, and I mean, because there's a thousand ways. Like, I mean, really, you got to really think about your business. Everybody's is very different. I think there's like fundamental umbrellas that we can all kind of align in the service-based industry. But I mean, it can be as simple as like, who's answering your phones? Like, if
Hmm.
you're lodged in the treatment room and you don't have anybody that can answer the phone lines or the text messages efficiently, there's like third-party services now that will literally funnel those calls for you.
Yeah.
I remember being a solo SD and like having to respond to text messages at 10 o'clock at night,
Hmm.
because I was in the treatment room all day. And that wasn't an efficient time. Like the consumer needs a response ASAP. And if
For
you're
sure.
not able to provide that for them, maybe that is a process that could be better in your business and run things more efficiently. And so going back to my point of actionability, like you have to make decisions very quickly. And guess what? So does your consumer. They don't want
Hmm.
to reach out to you and they want a response within like 30 seconds, you
Hmm.
know? And if you can't give that to them, you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah.
And they're going to go somewhere where they can make an appointment really efficiently, very quickly, and have a good experience associated to it.
That's so true because I used to work at this wellness center for hypnosis and I was like the only assistant and I also was working so we would get phone calls and then I would call them back like a few hours later and I remember there were some people that would be like, "Oh, I already called around and I booked with another place." Because
Mhm.
usually like if someone really wants a service, like if you're not answering them, they're just gonna go and call someone else.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, even think about, a gas station, right? If I see the gas station's too full, I'm going to the next one, right?
Hmm.
Or if the line's too long at Starbucks, I'm going to the next coffee shop. I'm not waiting in that line. And especially like I think we're in an era where we want things fast and efficient,
Hmm.
especially from a digital perspective. So like if you have any hiccups, again, processes, any hiccups in your online booking, you got to get that taken care of ASAP. So I just think like having that type of mentality and really looking at every area of your business outside of just the experience can really help you improve your efficiency, which is also going to improve your bottom line.
Hmm.
If you don't have a basic P&L in your business, which is a profit and loss statement, I highly recommend having it. QuickBooks I think is a great tool for a lot of like smaller businesses. I mean, even moderate sized businesses
Yeah.
that can really help you look at, money coming in, money coming out, where you're spending money and what is your cost of goods and services, labor, all of that stuff. And I would say numbers tell a story.
Hmm.
You got to figure out where the inefficiencies of that story lie. So if your new client spend is like really high, like your new client acquisition spend to like gain a new client, you need to figure out why. Or if your retention is really low, or if your inventory budget is way too high, you either need to look at your price pointing for your service, or you need to figure out why is your cost of goods and services too high. And so there's just like all these little things that can really make or break an esthetician, really,
Hmm.
really any business, especially in the service-based industry, because if we're not performing treatments, we don't make money.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to go into client retention. I know you mentioned it a few times and you have like a really good client retention. I believe it's like 78%. Yes. And so I wanted to kind of pick your brain on what factors do you believe, have your clients coming back and what do you think estheticians, like what mistakes do you think they're making that like the reason why they can't maintain clients basically?
Yeah, and I like to point out that 78% is lifetime patient retention. So since we opened our doors, we've retained 78% of our patient base, which is huge. I think
Mm-hmm.
in our industry, I think like 50% is like 40 or 50% is like considered the gold standard, which I think is just crazy to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about it this way. Think about a brand that you consistently come back to. Why?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, Sam, for you, like, is there like, it could be like clothing, makeup, a coffee shop. Like, is there a brand that you really love that you kind of are consistently going back to?
Yeah, and it's usually because like of the quality, I would say.
Okay. Quality. So a lot of times it's reliability, consistency, and quality control,
Mhm.
right? So time is money, right? And if I'm going to be spending my money on a coffee or my favorite lip gloss or, a service, my hairstylist, it's a consistent and reliable service. And I know what the experience is going to look like every single time, right?
Mm.
So reliability means that, they're not going to be pushing my appointment back. They're not, changing the treatment on me, or I come in and they're like, oh, actually, we have you down in 30 minutes. But I'm like, no, the text message says this, right? Or,
Mhm.
things like that. Or like a reliable cup of coffee. I have my favorite coffee shop down the street. They literally like measure their syrup and like the amount of milk that's in it. So when I say it's the most consistent and reliable cup of coffee, I will gladly pay $8 for it because it's so stinking good every single time, like it
Mhm.
without fail. And every time I see them whip out that little measuring cup on their little scale, I'm like, this guy is doing it right. Whoever this business owner is, he is doing it right because no matter what, you have a consistent cup of coffee every single time.
Mhm.
It's reliable. And then the other thing is an experience associated to it, right? That is what makes or breaks the longevity of any business, is
Mhm.
what is the experience associated to it. Even down if you look at Starbucks, like they do that you check into like, thanks, Ashlyn, right?
Mhm.
Because my name's on the app. They know my
Mhm.
name. I can put, what I got last time and things like that. Or I don't know if anybody here's ever been to Equinox, but the second that you walk through the door, they're like, hi, Ashley, nice to see you again. And like, they're like, enjoy your workout, enjoy your training session. And people love that, right?
Yeah.
And so the more that you can create a reliable and consistent experience and really personalize it to the consumer,
Mhm.
that's what's really going to help you create a fundamental baseline retention. Taking that a step further is people underestimate the power of a consultation. It might
Mhm.
not hit your bottom line, or I'm sorry, it might not hit your profitability right away because maybe that consult is free. Maybe you charge for your consults kind of depending on where you're at in your practice. But
Mhm.
if you don't do a thorough needs assessment with that client and understand who they are, what brings them in, so you can tailor the treatment plan to their experience and
Mhm.
really create change for them. And you're just having them come in and giving the same standardized treatment that you give every single person.
Mhm.
Your loyalty might not be super great. And that might, there are business models where it is very churn and burn and it's the same thing every single time and there's really no experience associated to it because that's just what you're paying for.
Mhm.
That's fine, but I don't believe that that's where retention comes into play. People want to feel important
Mhm.
and life is hard enough. And, if you can go out of your way to just really take the time to figure out who this person is, what are their goals aesthetically, and then taking them through that skincare journey, really kind of breaking down what that looks like.
Mhm.
That's where it happens. And, we could talk about automations to help create that more sustainable, but you have to treat every situation as make or break. You don't know
Yeah.
who the client that's coming through your doors are and never make an assumption, right? And so I would just say treat every situation like make or break, create reliability, consistency, and experience, and don't be afraid to do a thorough consult and needs assessment.
Yeah. As you're speaking, I'm like, this is like stuff that I feel like I really need to sit down and probably a lot of estheticians listening to this and basically create handbooks, for the client experience, for the experience after they leave, for the automations, like things like that. And I feel like it's just about being very clear and concise because I think that like we focus a lot on the treatment protocols. The same way we have a treatment protocol is kind of how we should have a protocol in every aspect of our business, kind of like a guidebook to follow. Because I mean, if I don't have a guidebook, then I'm not gonna do it. And so I think it's just one, just being clear on what that guidebook is, like what are the protocols in it. And so like for me, I'm gonna spend time this weekend really like getting clear on what each system is going to be for my business. And I think
Absolutely.
also too, like it doesn't matter how small you are. I think treat yourself as if you were a bigger business. And I think that that's like the key to scaling is if you are a smaller business, treating yourself like if you are a bigger business.
Absolutely. I tell people I'm delusional 24/7. Like, you have to think about it. I was, I was, I think like five, I don't remember. I was like super pregnant with my first son. I had
Hmm.
just gotten laid off while being pregnant, which was
Wow.
that was a good time. I was an executive and was just like, what am I going to do? Right. And
Hmm.
I'm like, let's open up, me and my business partner were like, let's open a business. And his wife was pregnant and our kids were due like 7 weeks apart. Like that sounds crazy, right?
Hmm.
And it starts with an idea. And we opened, my son was 4 months when we had our grand opening, and his daughter was like 5 or 6 months.
Wow.
I would say you have to have a sense of delusion of like you have no data, nothing to support that this is going to be successful. And like a
Hmm.
resume is just a resume at the end of the day, right? Like though I had an impressive resume, though my business partner has an impressive resume, it could very well not work, right? And like technically, I think we're like in the middle of a recession. So we
Hmm.
were like, let's hope this works, So you kind of have to have a sense of like delusional confidence that like this is gonna work and I'm gonna do everything in my power to make it work. And
Hmm.
it's really uncomfortable. You have to get really gritty. And you
Hmm.
have to constantly look at what's working and what's not working. Every single day, we're looking at what's working and what's not working. And
Hmm.
we're moving really, really quickly. So, to your point, it's like treat yourself like delusionally, like, this is my Super Bowl goal. Where
Hmm.
do I want to go? Do I want to hire people? Like, what does that look like for me? And then you kind of work backwards. And so, when we talked about like fundamental purpose, like my business partner and I knew we didn't want to just be a single location site. We knew we didn't want a little like rinky dink med spa that just kind of
Hmm.
like we did our services and we went home for the day. We wanted it to have like this incredible substance associated to it. And
Hmm.
to build something from scratch is exhausting, it's scary, it's all of those things. And you have to have a sense, like I said, of delusion.
Hmm.
But you have to have processes to support that, especially if you hire a team, because you
Yeah.
might be good at it and you can be the jack of all trades and wear 100 hats, but can your team?
Hmm.
And so the more that you, especially early like adoption into your business, can create those standardized protocols, the easier it's going to be for your business in the long run, especially as you bring on talent.
Yeah. And I would say like knowledge is power. I mean, that's kind of why we created this podcast is to expose our estheticians to this type of education that you're giving. And we're so grateful for it because like I just hired a mentor actually 2 months ago and just after my first call, I was like, wow, she sees in me more than what I even saw in me. And it's just because she's just so much more knowledgeable and she's accomplished so much more at this stage in her career. So she knows that I can. It's basically like I feel like sometimes we see a certain point for ourselves, like a destination, but we don't know that there's even greater destinations that we can achieve. And so I think this podcast is really great because you're going to show a lot of estheticians that there's like, they can achieve so much and all they need is the right systems in place and automations and just really getting clear on the protocols.
Well,
Do
I
you
love that
offer?
I was gonna say,
Sorry.
no, I love that you have a mentor. That is so huge. I mean, I've had 100 in my career so far, and you're right. It's like when you see where someone is, it feels like that's intangible based on where you're currently at. But somebody that can give you those raw skill sets to help make you better and to help you, and also be really bluntly honest, especially when
Yeah.
you're by yourself and you're solo esty, you don't know where sometimes your deficits are. It's hard to self-reflect. And so
Hmm.
having somebody that can point out where you're good at, where you're not good at, or where your blind spots are. I
Hmm.
remember I was 20 when I learned a P&L, right? And I'm so grateful for that experience. And I remember my mentor at the time was like, you need to know your profitability. And I'm like, why? I just want to go get Starbucks and right. And I'm gonna hang with my friends. And he was like, no, you're gonna learn a freaking P&L because there's no way that you're gonna run any business or grow your career without knowing how much money's coming in and how much money's coming out. And I'm so grateful for that experience because it really did set me up for success. And he was actually not in the aesthetics field whatsoever. He was more in like the wellness space. And so sometimes a mentor doesn't have to be in your respective field. It can be in a completely different field like tech or product development and things like that. But definitely love that you're getting a mentor. And I think everyone should have one. I still have mine to this day.
And do you offer mentorship to like any estheticians or spa owners?
Yeah, it's more limited, but yes, I do. You can always reach out to me personally, and I will let you know if I have any spots available. I'm a mom of two. I've got a business. We're about to open up another location, so my time is a little limited. So I take limited spots, but I'm happy to always answer questions. I'm happy to give people my email and do my best to give back. And that's also why I do podcasts as well, and a lot of printed articles is just do my best to kind of help someone out because I wish there's a lot of this information I wish I would have known 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, this is really, really great. Thank you so much. And so, where can our listeners find you on Instagram and your website?
Yeah, so they can find our med spa at TIEV Medspa on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. That's at TIEV Medspa. You can also follow me personally at Ashlyn Freitas, and then our website is www.tiev.co.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashlyn. This was great.